The one thing we can appreciate the British for is their humour. That and their fantasy writers. The two things we can appreciate the British for are humour and fantasy writers. Plus the pageantry. The three things we can thank the British for are humour, fantasy writers, and their glorious pageantry. Plus the best evil villains to ever grace the stage or screen. Alright, among the many contributions we are grateful to the British for are humour, fantasy writers, pageantry, and villains. And the best punk bands. Alright, starting over. There is something different about British humour. The best examples combine snark, deadpan, social commentary, and often outright lunacy. This leads us to today's Mad Musings, Monty Python's Cocurricular Mediaevil Reenactment program by Exalted Funeral. A new comedy RPG that hasn't hit the shelves yet, well, at least unless you ordered it on Kickstarter. So does this game manage to capture the sheer insanity of the Pythons, or does it need to bravely run away? I'm Mr. Welch, and squad, camp it up! If you're wondering where I got my British accent, well, it's one half of the fact that I've been sick for a week. But I learned my actual one from numerous gamers from all parts of England over the years. How's from Workington, a lovely little town up north, with a smashing game called Uppies and Downies that I recommend you check out all their videos. The entire town gathers to play the sport, where the object is to get to the ball to the docks or the church and throw it up in the air 3 times. I've just given you all the rules. It's a pleasant diversion to play in a quaint English town on Good Friday, but not in your DM's living room. Desmond came from London and always had the best food, like spaghetti with mustard on it. You gotta take his word for it, though. Stormy invited me to Blackpool, where he told me all about all the bars and nightclubs I would find most impressive, at least until I informed him that I wasn't gay. Then he invited me to lovely sunny Liverpool. So I picked up bits of all their accents, and some I learned from drama class, and merged them into the abomination that you're listening to today, and I'm going to keep them for this entire video, because I bloody can. Monty Python's humour is best described as taking a normal situation to its most ludicrous extreme. A cheese shop without cheese, a painting of the Last Supper revealed to have 28 disciples and 3 Christs, the use of lethal humour in WW2, a poor lady waiting to order breakfast only to be interrupted constantly by musical Vikings, and of course a store clerk who can't admit the parrot is bleeding demised. So how do you capture this brand of madness in an RPG? By making it as random, lethal, and chaotic as possible. This game might not be for the serious gamer, but find me a serious gamer wanting to play a Monty Python RPG. The game's core concept is you're playing characters in a BBC medieval television program, complete with a cast of characters straight out of the Dark Ages, circa 932 AD for some reason. Despite what you might think, this is not entirely focused on Holy Grail. Instead, it incorporates elements of flying circus, Life of Brian, and Meaning of Life. How in the blazes does that make any sense? Well, it doesn't, and that's the point. You just have to roll with it when you bloody peasants having to encounter the Mafia, space aliens, Ralph the Wonder Llama, Biggest Dickus, or a giant cybernetic penguin. It's not going to make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. In fact, the less sense it makes, the better the game's going to be. Adding to the lunacy is the fact that the Game Master also has a character representing the BBC's head of light entertainment, or the Whole. The Whole is typically a character from the Flying Circus, but there are a few from other shows. Every time a player is punished, you roll on that particular Whole's chart to see what happens, from instant death to changing the show's format to getting letters of complaint. Too many letters of complaint, and the Whole gets fired and a new one's determined. Yeah, even the Game Master's character can die in this game. You have to remember what each Whole likes and play along with their rules. The Whole can punish you for boring play, stalling tactics, or rolling too well. The audience likes drama. If you succeed at everything, you're going to make them change the channel. But this is England in the 1970s, so your choice of channels is BBC 1, 2, 3, or 4, all of which is simulcast in your show. The mechanics for MPC are dueling dice. When you face off against a foe, you roll your die, he rolls his, and the defender wins ties. If you fail, your opponent will have a set of results that will occur. For climbing or general skill tests, you roll your die and try to get over a target number. The catch is this game requires special dice, specifically the D14, the D16, the D18, the D30, and everything in between. There are 18 different stats, and you get to pick 5 of them, the rest of which you always suck at. If your class has a retainer, you only get 4 skills, but your retainer gets to carry stuff. Each skill is set to a particular die. If you roll the maximum on the die, you get a merit, you move up to the next highest die of your skill, and you get to re-roll that 1 and add it to the total. If you roll a 1, you get a demerit, and you're relegated to the next lowest die. And remember that rolling too well isn't appreciated by the Whole. And this is the part of the program where I remember that I forgot to talk about the technical details of the book, so I shall need a good spanking later. MPCMRP was funded on Kickstarter because what game isn't these days? You can pre-order it there with a wide variety of add-ons. I was given most of these add-ons for the review, which will not influence me in any way. Mainly because this is not the young ones RPG. I mean, come on, how can you not be influenced by a show that suddenly has Motorhead appear in your kitchen? God, I miss Lemmy. I once watched him play chess with himself on stage and win with both black and white at the same time. The game's creation is accredited Brian Chabot and Craig Schaefer, not to be confused with Craig Schaefer, the lead actor from Nightbreed, which is sad because that would have been a very cool coincidence. The game is a respectable 348 pages, which is even more impressive as they use every single page of this, going so far as printing the index and table of contents on the flypaper. Art is a combination of fantasy stock art from centuries ago, saving them quite a bit of quid there, and some of Terry Gilliam's favourite sleep paralysis demons. Send all complaints about the cover art to Keith Lowe. Now back to our regularly scheduled review. Creating a character is quick and straightforward, which is a good thing because this game's going to give Paranoia and Call of Cthulhu, aka COC a cork, a run for their money regarding the title of most lethal RPG. No matter how hard you try, there's always a chance you're going to get squashed by a giant foot. There's also lots of death randomly flying about, and there's a good chance you're going to catch a rather fatal case of it. There's also a fantasy chart, in case you want to follow in the footsteps of many ill-fated cock investigators and go flat-out barmy, which might be stealing from that game's mechanics a bit too much, but can you blame them? What game designer worth his notepad doesn't love cock? If your character snuffs it, you immediately take control of your retainer or a random background NPC and you're back in the scene. To make a character, simply pick your class and follow the instructions. This will require you to select a few particular skills, assign a predetermined spread of dice to those skills, take note of which skill you're banned from taking, jot down your starting, death, and loony traits, fill in the background information on your character, detailed by the individual class, and then your character. This would have been a hell of a lot easier if they'd put those instructions in order. For a churl, you fill out your profession, knights need to pick their particular idiom, troubadours have to compose a sonnet, and they're ready to play. See, easy enough to replace that hapless sod who didn't know the capital of Assyria was Nineveh. Every class has a unique special ability called the Spiff and Sirius ability, a chart that they can invoke at any time. You roll on this chart, pray to God that the results apply to the situation. I said pray, not grovel. Sometimes the result is bad, sometimes the result's spectacular. Each result has a particular recharge result, so if you're lucky, you can use this ability multiple times if you get the right results. The absolute gonzo results reset at the end of a session, so there's always the chance that this is a one-time option. After that, roll on a chart for every skill you picked, and you get an accoutrement to give you some sort of bonus. Everything from a bird whistle to a letter of marque to a moralist from Stonehenge, so bring a card for that one. And now a word from our sponsor. Hunger. It gnaws at us, constantly growing. It consumes us lest we feed it, but then it is only a brief respite before its return. It will hurt you, it will anger you, it will weaken you. Your only options in the face of this constant demand are either giving in to oblivion or its demands. I cannot help you if you choose the former. For the latter, you do have several choices. I do not recommend the obvious solution. That is how you get Wendigo. Instead, why not try Taco Schnell, Deutschland's finest Tex-Mex restaurant? You can sate your endless pangs with our specialties, like our Schnitzelitos, pommes frites fajitos, Sauerbraten enchiladas with our famous pickle habanero sauce. For dessert, our Black Forest churro are muy wunderbar. For those on a budget, why are you eating out? You would save so much cooking for yourself. We will not judge you. Your banker will do that for us. But I understand. You are lazy. Fine. We will cook for you. Try our all-you-can-eat platter. What we put on your plate, that is all you can eat. Happy? I did not think so. That is why you need to come here with more money. So come to Taco Schnell. Mach rapido. Now that you've got the players set, it's time for the whole to get their act together. You've got to randomly determine which GM character is going to be the starting whole of the evening. Most of these characters are taken from Flying Circus, and it would be helpful if you watch that particular sketch to get an idea of how to play each one. Each hole has a list of likes and dislikes and a set number of demerits that trigger a roll on the Schumann chart. That chart's a custom list of possibilities for each hole, some beneficial, some painful, a few lethal, and of course there's a chance the BBC decides to change the program format, or you get the dreaded letter of complaint. If the number of letters received reaches the hole's limit, they are sacked and a new one is generated. If the Beeb decides that your show sucks, it will be replaced by a randomly determined new show in an entirely different style at great expense and at the last second. In case of a format shift, everyone has a random skill reduced to D4 and can choose to roleplay the latest show, which restores the penalized skill, and reveals to the BBC that the new show is worse than the previous one. Instead of dragging out the cast of Red Dwarf yet another 3-episode series, they put yours back on the air. You don't need to know much about British politics, sports, or children's interests, or anything else that's going to happen like that, and it's probably best you don't. If all else fails, just complain about the current Doctor Who scripts and everybody else will understand. I mean, come on, BBC, it's Doctor Who. Equal parts action, comedy, and horror all wrapped into a single show. I've got over 100 episodes on DVD, from An Unearthly Child to Capaldi's second season. You might say I'm a bit of a Whovian. My first episode was Robot on PBS Channel 8 at noon Sunday. Yeah, that's number 4's introduction, and I was hooked. I had no idea what I was watching back at the time. It was in the 70s, but I had to get more. And now you done mucked it up. Don't tell me Doctor Who isn't for everybody. Doctor Who is most certainly for everybody. It's a family show. I didn't care for In the Forest of the Night until I saw a room full of children mesmerized by it, and I realized it doesn't matter what the episode is, it's somebody's favorite. I mean, how do you screw up Doctor Who? It's not like England doesn't have a whole host of brilliant fantasy writers. Neil Gaiman might have turned out to be a tosser, but you can't tell me the Doctor's Wife wasn't sci-fi perfection. Find some actual science fiction writers. Most of the good ones today probably already have a few hundred bits of fan fiction and they're just waiting for your call. After all, what's the second thing we appreciate the British for? I might be too much of a Yank for your taste if you're looking for a script, but if you're curious, daeth fi nelo o real and mil saith pedal pum. So I think you can grandfather me in. Alright, back to your regular scheduled programming. Again. The gameplay, as you can expect, is a bit trifling, as it makes things as confusing as possible to keep things interesting, and also as an emergency psychological treatment for your cat. The game uses 10 different currencies and doesn't provide a conversion chart for any of them. I highly recommend you use the 1960s British currency system, as we're all familiar with how they used to break down the pound pre-decimal. I don't have to explain it to you. Just remember there's 17 eggs to a gold piece, 6 3/4 acorns to a naughty pitcher, 14 dead plague bodies per epic-class twit trading card, and 94 tubs of Wizzo butter in a gemstone. See? Easy enough. Gameplay is creative anarchy, where you have a defined goal and you get rewards for completing your tasks. It's not easily done when one of your characters suddenly finds himself Pope. God can pop in to get your opinion on the merits of first-class cricket compared to limited overs, and you know how heated those discussions can get. There's a random chance you get kidnapped by aliens and must help them settle the marital differences. There's a slight chance the whole completely botches his job, gets demoted to actors, and one of the players gets promoted to the new hall. And what player doesn't love the new hall? While no plan survives contact with the enemy, few games of NPC MRP survive initial introductions. More than a few will end up with everyone in their underwear chasing around some randy fat guy while an out-of-control saxophonist plays cheesy jazz in Trafalgar Square while time speeds up for all involved. At least at the end of that little bit of lunacy, your nipples do tingle in the most delightful way. There is an extensive collection of NPCs and monsters wanting to harm your characters, some wanting a bit more than others. Each has a die type and a number of deeds required to best them to defeat them finally. You can decide what skill you're going to try to beat them with. You have to roleplay the encounter, then you roll the appropriate die and the high roll wins. It's that simple. If you fail, there's a description of what happens next, usually a bit of death or loony. For the more fantastical or famous types, of course, it's a bit more complicated. The harmless little bunny, upon winning, decapitates whoever rolled the lowest to defend against it. As it always goes first, somebody's probably going to die at least once around. This bunny can one-shot Cthulhu. It's in the rules. All the usual Holy Grail characters are here, as NPCs, antagonists, during the adventure. There's also a host of medieval characters from Flying Circus, and even the space aliens from Life of Brian. Use them in the funniest ways possible. There's no long campaigning in this game. The sheer lethality guarantees it. Characters can be made in a couple of minutes, but you're going to need some erasable character sheets for the more challenging adventures, as you're filling up the dead cart rather quickly on this one. It's meant to be rapid-fire comedy, and even rewards players that willingly play the straight man, at least for a few of the holes. Characters are replaceable, and it's normal for you to create new characters to fill in the role that got the previous one killed. You can sacrifice retainers and accoutrements to avoid wounds, and even heal with the abilities of some of those classes. Of course, rolling on the mushroom chart to see which one you got's a bit of a gamble. Still, when you typically only have half a dozen wounds at best, you know you're only one bad roll away from shuffling off the mortal coil. This is a book that needs to be passed around. If nothing else, the random charts and sidebars are hilarious, if not completely useless in the game. The random answer chart for NPCs has 4 answers: yes, no, I don't know, and an entire paragraph discussing the effects of quantum physics on gravity. You're free to use any of the charts for any reason, if nothing else to add a random element to your game. There's several references to all the movies and a few Monty Python adjacent movies, such as the Not Jabberwocky. You don't have to know Monty Python by heart, but it would really help. Holy Grail's a definite must-watch, because you're going to take most of the majority of their content from the movie. There are asides to other films and quite a bit of callbacks to Flying Circus, especially for the whole. It's a bit of a pricey game. The main book is $50, but you can need to spend 20 for the custom dice and 30 for the screen. There's a set of merits and demerit tokens for 20, and you're going to need to spend about $100 for all the alcohol necessary to play this game proper. I do give some profound respect to the DM screen, as it's very well built, thick card stock. It's got moving parts, and it's got all the holes to slot in so the characters know who's in charge of light entertainment. It even has a pop-up god and an on-air sign to let you know that you're playing the game right. Just be sure to not avert your eyes and depress him with those miserable psalms. That's Monty Python's Cocurricular Mediaevil reenactment program. It stands to be one of the most memorable comedy games written, but you gotta be a fan of that kind of humor. You're a gamer, more than likely you've already got Holy Grail memorized and you know all the lyrics to the Lumberjack song. It's got a bit of a learning curve as this is a game where you pass around the duties of the whole, even mid-game if the results call for it. It's well put together, it understands the assignment, and doesn't try to bog you down in the rules. The formatting for character creation is a bit of a boggle as it seems to be out of order in how you're supposed to put things together. On the death, no death side of comedy games, this is very much in the death camp. It's probably funny if you're British, but most of us can fake it. If nothing else, you can cross-pollinate your games, unleash a naughty vicar on Bridgerton, or take a vacation in Murder in Paradise, and shoot that body count through the roof. Next up, I'm jumping back into the world of darkness to look at Hunter the Reckoning. The game many players consider the death knell for the brand. Until then, I want a Last Supper with one Christ, 12 disciples, no kangaroos, no trampoline acts. By Thursday lunch or you don't get paid.